Welcome back to the Gateway RV Transport Podcast. You're joined today by Justin, Jordan, and Greg. Thanks for tuning in. We wanted to talk to you about some of our key takeaways. Every year, our insurance company, so we work with a company called Cottingham and Butler. They're a big name in the trucking industry. They put on a summit for their clients, and so we really enjoy attending that. And to the outside world, an insurance conference might not sound super interesting, but it's actually one of my favorite things we do all year. I really enjoy it, and I think that would you two agree? That's one of our more fun events that we.
Well, it gets you out of the office, and there's free food, and listen to some interesting speakers that talk about, the esoteric RV. Well, maybe not specifically RV, I guess, but
trucking,
small trucking.
Well, and you hear insurance, and insurance doesn't sound like an interesting topic, but they have a lot of interesting things, and some of their macro level things. It's kind of. It's quite interesting.
I think most things, if it's pertinent to you, it's more interesting. Like if it was, like even in that, the speakers that talk about things that are not really related to us, it's harder to engage because you don't see the relevance to you. So
we thought we would share some of our key takeaways from this summit. So Jordan, Greg, and I attended this a couple of weeks ago in August or early September rather. And so we thought we'd go through those, and like Jordan was saying, some of them weren't super applicable to us. Some of them were more related to standard trucking, or so we don't have a lot of takeaways from there. But we wanted to share some of these takeaways with you so that you can get some of the key points. And so if it's all right, I'll go ahead and get started, and we'll talk about some of these things that are going on in the trucking world. So the first presenters, they talked about basically some different economic things going on, right, Greg?
Yeah. The title was Freight Market Realities was the title of that presentation.
Yeah. So I'll start by sharing some of the things that I found interesting. One that, I am curious why this is, I haven't looked into it, but one of the presenters talked about the connection between new home construction and the trucking industry, which makes sense if you're building more homes, you're needing to transport more goods to supply, and so there's some mirroring that goes on, and they affect each other. But one of the presenters talked about one of the major hotspots for new home building in the country is in Northwest Arkansas. So Northwest Arkansas was like the hot spot for new home builds,
which is weird, because I don't know why anybody would want to live there.
Well, I'm trying to what is in Northwest Arkansas?
Probably a combination of inexpensive cost of living, industrial, like places that are hiring. So just a combination. I bet a lot of outside movements, because we experienced that here in the last few years of people have no connection to Indiana specifically, but just were moving from out west, needed cheaper cost of living. There's a lot of good jobs. And just moved. Yeah. Likely a similar thing.
So something's going on in Northwest Arkansas. Thought that was pretty interesting. So they talk about tariffs are creating a lot of uncertainty in the market, as you might expect. The national median price for a new home build in the U.S. is $440,000. I thought that was high, but you're thinking homes in California, because you hear that in Indiana. Our homes aren't as expensive.
Mine, when I bought my house a couple of years ago, was not even half that.
Yeah. And so, granted, a new home build is going to be more expensive, but still, that seems pretty high. They talk about freight. The freight market is nearing equilibrium, so the supply and demand are starting to mirror each other. 2006 was a peak in truck manufacturing, which was just before the DEF system regulations started coming out. That was pretty interesting. The last 3 years have had lots of large fleets cutting back trucks. My general impression from them was that the trucking market right now is not great, but not terrible. They referenced a couple times that the trucking industry has been in basically a 3-year recession, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I know also in it, one of the things I marked is that they've said the trucking industry is oversaturated at the moment, but they expect in the next year that it should equalize.
Yeah. And one of the things that kind of made sense to me, and we experienced this in our industry, is there's an influx of carriers during COVID, and then a mass exodus of carriers kind of after COVID, and they're still filtering out some of the excess amount of motor carriers.
Yep.
And then just my last point in here is the general consensus I got was that 2026 is probably going to be comparable to 2025, that it would be kind of a relatively flat. It's not like 2026 is going to be booming, but it's also not expected to just be, falling. So it should be relatively flat is the take that I got.
Yeah.
How about you, Greg? What was your...
I got a lot of the same things. There was one statistic that they shared that they mentioned the U.S. has a shortage of 4 million homes, which I thought was just insane number. But
that's kind of interesting.
I wonder how they come up with that number.
Right? It's probably got to be just, I think it was like age of people who are not buying homes right now, but have in history. So, and it's because there's not enough homes. So I think that might be it. If that makes any sense. I don't know. But yeah, other than that, that was the only extra thing I had to share on that one.
I think one of the interesting, so we've heard this in the past elsewhere, but Elkhart County, where most of our RVs are manufactured, is a good indicator of the country's financial projection for the next 2 to 4 quarters, because luxury items are built there. RV campers, 100% luxury item. Well, actually not as much as it used to. It's not 100%. Some people are using that as their primary residence. Yeah. But then also like boats. And so if Elkhart County is thriving, that's a good long-term indication, or medium-term indication of the U.S. economic health in a very general sense. But when they talked about the 3-year recession, could say that we've felt that too.
Yeah. And it was interesting comparing that. Like, it's not necessarily that we've been in a macro, the entire economy has been in a recession, but the trucking industry, which is obviously connected to the economy as a whole, being in somewhat of a recession. It's also interesting when they compare a lot of the graphs. I felt like, we fairly well mirror the RV industry as a whole. So like how many units we ship mirrors the RV industry's retail sales pretty closely, to where, which makes sense, right? Like if people are registering more RVs, it means they're buying more RVs, which means we're shipping more RVs. And that seems to mirror pretty well the general state of the economy. If more people have more money, they're buying more RVs. If people have less money, they're buying less, which means we're shipping less. I was like, it makes sense that we very closely, and I imagine most industries are probably that way, but there's a lot that are going to be different than that they might not be as connected or even inverse of that. So anyway, it's kind of interesting. Well, the next, they had I don't remember I labeled it the Trucking State of the Union. Was that like a panel?
Yeah, that was the title of it, and it was a panel between basically the different truck associations, some of their higher ups. So like the American Trucking Association, the Tank Carriers Association, and one other that I don't remember what the things stand for.
Well, probably because it wasn't like the tankers. So like, that's not really our world.
Yeah.
But what there was 8.5 million jobs in the trucking industry is what one of the guys up there said. 1 out of 18 jobs in the U.S. is related to trucking. So those are kind of interesting stats.
Yeah. One other stat with that was that in 29 states, trucking is the #1 job in that state.
In how many states?
29.
Whoa,
so over half the country, the #1 job in your state is trucking.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That was and then there was a big or there was a presentation on cargo theft, which a lot of that wasn't as related to our types of cargo, but there's a few things that I found interesting. There was an explosion of cargo theft in 2020, and then another big jump in 2023 and 2024, and then this was one that is interesting. The Arizona-California border is a major hotspot for pilfering thefts, or like where they're stealing parts of a load, if I'm understanding what pilfering theft was. So that was interesting because the Arizona-California border. So if you're going to be in that area, not as much that they're not stealing RVs. That's not a hotspot for RV theft specifically, but just that's a hotspot for theft. And so if you're on the Arizona-California border, you might want to be careful or maybe try not to stop for the night there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that. Those truck stops and rest areas have thieves. I don't know, that are targeting specific easy targets.
Yeah.
So I wonder how much that translates to theft and for the general public too. But there's got to be some crossover of.
In addition to, like, one of the things they cited was the cost of fuel at the moment you go to the California border jumps up significantly. So a lot of people stop and fuel up at that border. If I'm understanding right, that was one of the big contributors.
Yeah. I think basically just lots of traffic, so it's easier to blend in and get out.
And I've not had, obviously, goods stolen, but I've had, in a truck stop, I've had a battery and hitch and pins stolen different times. And so even then, that people are thefts of convenience. They're looking for it. So just be careful and cognizant when you stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else on cargo theft, Greg? Did you
have? I mean, a lot of it that they talked about was they kind of separated it into two categories: straight theft and strategic theft. Which straight theft is just them stealing items. Strategic theft is where they do what's called double brokering and imitating carriers and whatnot, which the strategic theft doesn't really apply to us as much. And they did say that's what's been going up like crazy. So I have notes about it, but not a lot of it is relevant necessarily to us. I found it super interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to know just in general too. That's
but couple other statistics is that cargo theft has went up 93% in the last couple of years. And then also the average cargo theft is worth over $200,000. Which is just a lot of money.
Yeah.
They've also apparently a lot of states used to have cargo theft task forces, and now they're being shrunk and staffed less, and it's being more, statewide it's being focused on less. However, federally they're focusing on it more. So sounds like states aren't doing as much, but the federal government is. So, yeah.
Well, then the next presenter, their keynote for the first night was Dr. Santos from Yale University. She was a happiness expert. If I remember right, she taught the most, what was it? It was like the most sought after class at Yale.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which was about like the psychology of happiness, basically. I
think that might be what it was called.
Yeah, something like that, or the happiness in the good life, or something like this. And so it's like they had like record breaking attendance. So she just talked about happiness, which is applicable to probably all people. But she gave, I have her 10 points that and related to happiness in the workforce. So I'll rattle off those 10, and then if you guys have any additional things that you got from it. But happiness leads to increased performance. So when you're happier, you do a better job. Kind of makes sense. And none of these things are necessarily groundbreaking, but it's still good to, I think,
it's good to reinforce it in your mind,
Yeah. Connection leads to increased happiness. Serving others leads to increased happiness. Gratitude leads to increased happiness. Physical health leads to increased happiness. Half an hour of cardio daily is as or more effective than an antidepressant. And she talked about the importance of sleep in contributing to your happiness. Mental presence leads to increased happiness. Embracing reality leads to increased happiness. So not living in delusion, basically. Self-compassion leads to increased happiness. Focusing on your strengths leads to increased happiness. And time affluence, which is basically, feeling like you have time, not feeling rushed all the time, and having time and taking time, not feeling like there's just no time. The clock is always ticking, and you're anxious about time. Yeah. So it was, kind of interesting things to just remind yourself.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, I feel like each year at this conference, they usually have someone talking about positivity or happiness. And it's like you said, it's never really groundbreaking, but I feel like it's something that everyone always needs to be reminded of. Because if you don't think about it, and this is one of her things, if you don't do it, you're not going to get the benefits from it, So if you're not actively thinking about it, trying to honestly make yourself happy, you're not gonna.
Yeah. Like the concepts. It's rare that you hear of a revolutionary new idea, like you should probably not smoke cigarettes. It's like people know that.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're coming out with new information, but it's just it's simple stuff. It's just not always easy stuff. And so I'm being reminded about it.
Even simple stuff, I like the phase of life that the recipient is in is always changing. So say you're speaking to 100 people, there might be a sound bite that for some reason particularly resonates with you. So there'll be a quote and you're like, oh, yes, that is exactly how I feel. You might have heard that quote 15 times in the past, but at that time is when you were the most receptive to it. And I think messages like this, because there's a lot of like self-help business type books that kind of have a very similar formula, that have the same type of message with some shifts here and there, and they label it something differently. And some people swear by different books, different schools of thought, but I think because the one that impacted them the most probably depended on their life circumstances. So like the more that you go through these type of simple things, there might be a story or a phrase, or you might be in a position at that moment where you're particularly receptive. One of the points on here that she made was, which you mentioned, taking time for gratitude, making sure you tell the people that are around you that you're grateful for them, and how powerful, impactful that is for both of you and your happiness. And that's in the general workplace. It's not very often, I think, that people feel genuine like gratitude expressed to them, or that they're expressing it to somebody else. Hey, thanks for that. Good job. Like that's about the most that a lot of people get is in terms of gratitude. And when you have somebody that says, hey, you're doing an awesome job, I thought you just would know that. Like, I think that goes a long way, no matter what field you're in. So I know we say this on the podcast to our drivers often, but we really are grateful for the great job that they do. But anyway, there was a lot of that. She has a podcast, and
The Happiness,
and probably
the Happiness Lab.
Does she have like a TED Talk? Seems like a kind of thing that would be.
Her podcast is called The Happiness Lab. It's a pretty popular podcast.
Yeah. So I think it would be good. Just plug into that every once in a while. Drivers are driving around, for 700 miles a day. You got a little bit of time. Look that one up.
Lori Santos is her name. Her podcast is The Happiness Lab. She's also been a guest on a lot of other popular ones. Like I listen to Andrew Huberman sometimes, which if you're familiar with Andrew Huberman, he is the Stanford professor. He talks a lot about neuroscience. I really like a lot of his stuff, but she's on there, and she's on a bunch of other ones. Lori Santos, The Happiness Lab.
Yeah. The other one that she pointed out, and I'll just be quick because we want to make this a relatively short episode, but is to be present. In fact, that was another one of the books that I read not that long ago about just show up. You just be present, turn on, try a little bit. And we talk about this regularly, just in our day-to-day philosophy of life, but it doesn't take that much more effort to engage, to try. I mean, it costs $0 more, and time-wise, it's very, very minimal to just have a smile or to say thank, or just to have a, try. Mm-hmm. And so she says that just meditate and be present. And that was the other part that I liked from hers.
Yeah. Well, anything else on? Then we'll move into day 2. So this was a 2-day thing. There's a guy who talks. They have a lawyer that comes back every year. So, a big name in the trucking industry lawyer. Just a couple of things that I thought were kind of interesting. 2 to 3% of lawsuits actually make it to court. So like most lawsuits, they don't, because it's expensive. And I am sure most people don't like going to court. We were just talking today how none of us have been to court, so that's on our bucket list of things that we don't want to do.
I mean, I kind of do want to go to court
just to see what it's like. That's one of the things. Like going to. Have you ever been to jury duty?
No.
I got some. I didn't get selected for the jury. I'm kind of glad that I didn't, but because I didn't want to, spend 4 days going through this kind of boring trial. But it's kind of interesting to sit through. Like everybody should at least show up to report to jury duty.
Kind of want to.
I want to.
You've never been?
I've never been. No.
Oh man, I'm a lot more. I've fulfilled my civic responsibility, serving my country more than you two have.
I mean, I got called for jury duty, but it was right after I moved back to Fort Wayne. It was like that. The week I moved up here, I got the letter in the mail saying the place I just moved from, Terre Haute, I got called for jury duty there.
Too late.
But since I had moved, I was no longer actually
a candidate
eligible or whatever.
Yeah. Well, just a quick recommendation. I maybe have talked to you guys about this. There's a show that my sister-in-law told me about called Jury Duty. Very interesting show. You could look it up sometime. Watch it when you're, chilling at night at the truck stops. But it's the basic premise is everybody is an actor except for one person. So it's half social experiment, half comedy, and it's quite encouraging and heartwarming. The guy who's not an actor is it's quite fun to see him on this crazy. So it's a fake jury that he's on, and it's quite comical. And there's a big name actor on there, James Madsen. Anyway, if you haven't seen it, I recommend it. It is quite funny. So anyway, 2 to 3% of lawsuits make it to court. English law. Oh, this was a big one. So you may have heard about this, and if any of you listen to like Road Dog Radio, XM stuff, it's probably talks about this. But there's recently passed that commercial drivers have to be able to have to be a certain level of proficient at the English language, right, Greg? You're a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, it's
fluent.
The law's been there in the regulations, but since Trump got in, he's basically during Obama, they were like, "Oh, we're no longer enforcing this." But since Trump got back in, and he signed an executive order saying, "Hey, you have to enforce this now." So,
and he mentioned he's like each state will vary in the level of enforcement. Some being not at all, some being very strict. And if I understood right, the test there's a few layers of testing, but they can pull you over. It's like you need to be able to identify these 12 road signs. And then if not, like they have a progressive thing. But one of the accidents they cited, which this was big news a couple of weeks ago, there was basically somebody that a guy down in Florida that U-turned in the middle of the road, and there was fatalities, and he didn't speak English. So it was kind of highlighted this new emphasis on this law. So that was one of the big things they talked about. Kind of interesting. And then just one other note that I had is there are 700,000 carriers in the U.S., and only 40,000 of them are rated, of which we are one of those. It just shows you the sheer quantity of small carriers out there that are not rated, which I don't know, I found interesting, if not
What
insightful.
does rated mean?
So like our rating is satisfactory. So you have a few categories.
Like our DOT compliance.
Yeah,
rating.
and Greg, you would probably be better at
basically it's if you go through an audit, you come out of it and you get a rating either. I forget what they're actually. You either get satisfactory, which means you're good. You get conditional, which means you had issues, but you can still run and perform. Or you get, I don't remember what it's called. It might be unsatisfactory or something. But basically that's the one where you have to stop all functions and majorly fix some things until you can get going again. But yeah.
So most carriers are unrated. They never went through an audit. We've been through that, and we have a satisfactory rating. But so it was interesting. Greg, did you catch anything else from him?
Just a couple notes. One of the things he mentioned is insurance limits will probably going to increase over the next couple of years, which means insurance rates will probably slightly go up, which they always are, but just not great news for us, but it's what it is.
Yeah, you have to have insurance to do this.
Yep. And with the cost of accidents and cases going up, that's why limits go up, so they can cover it. Yeah.
The next presenter, and feel free to interject at any time if I'm skipping something, was not super applicable to us. At least I didn't feel so. Trucking decisions and the use of AI. The main thing that I got away from the presenter there was just focus on the right problems. And so he talked about how AI could help resolve those problems. But the first thing is you got to make sure that you're focusing on what the actual problems are sometimes. And this is pretty applicable in all domains of life, but focus on the right stuff.
I think that's related to, I think this is the same one where I had the note of experiment. That you should always be experimenting with things so whether you're a independent contracted driver, experiment what loads, where you're stopping for fuel. Always be consciously trying to improve and experiment. And same thing with us here.
I have just thought of it would be funny if I found in your desk, or like my wife has a notebook of just different experiments. Like I'm like exhibit A, and she's like analyzing me. It's like, I noticed today when She's keeping notes on different experiments that she's running on me.
I mean, probably subconsciously we're doing that with the people we interact with all the time.
I notice when I say this
type of joke is not one that they react well to, but if I accidentally stub my toe, they find that hilarious. And so
you're just kind of keeping notes.
Yeah. The only note I had from it, because like I said, didn't feel like a lot of it was pertinent to us, but just was make better decisions. So you just need to, and part of that goes with the whole keep experimenting, because you have to experiment to know what the right decisions are. But once you do, make sure you make better ones, in the future.
And of course, he's talking about AI. So, the other thing that he talked about is how it's not that much longer before they kill us all and, take over. Okay. The next person, this was my favorite presentation probably, if not top two. He's talks about it every year. They have Bruce Melman is their politics expert. He gets on and kind of gives a high-level overview of what's going on and how to interpret a lot of things that are happening in Washington. So this is some of the things that I found to be interesting. The new norm is higher risk. So things are just, the new norm is that you don't know and that there's a lot of risk and uncertainty. Tariffs will come and go, but they are here to stay. So we talked about, there's a lot of news where, a lot of stuff associated with Trump's pushing these tariffs and this tariff and this country's coming back with this tariff. But the details of it are going to ebb and flow, but tariffs is a part of life. Changing elections are way more common now. This was one thing that was very interesting. He showed change elections, meaning the two parties. So if, like one president will be Republican, the next will be Democrat. They switch way more often. And I think it was pretty significant, pretty much all the time now. It's switching. As people are unsatisfied with one side, they flip to the other. They're unsatisfied, they flip back. And so it's more.
Yep.
It's quite interesting. Trust is localized. This is something I found. Mm-hmm. So most people, if you ask them, say, do you trust Congress? No. Do you trust your congressperson? Yes. People would ask, do you trust big business? Or no. Do you trust your business? Yes. So it's this idea that the closer something is to you, the more you trust it, the farther, the less you trust it. And so the bigger, the less trust, the smaller, the more trust. And then his main actionable takeaway is just you've got to be really adaptable because the game is constantly, consistently changing. And the political uncertainty is not going away. It will continue to be the crazy political environment that we're in.
Yeah. Me personally, one of the things that stuck out is I feel like since COVID's happened, people are like, oh, can't wait till it gets back to normal. And it's like, he, mentioned this is the new normal. It's never going to go back to what it was. You just have to accept this is the new normal and it's going to change again. One of the other kind of interesting statistics that he mentioned was that Trump has a 93% approval rate with Republicans, which from my understanding is really high and higher than it's been.
At the time of the presentation. Presentation.
Yeah. I think it was actually like a week or two before that.
Right.
When the numbers were from. But yeah. So as you're listening to this, it's probably changed. One of the other things he mentioned is that over the last several years, countries across the globe have been more focusing, or they have been trying to think of how to phrase this. They are investing more domestically than they are nationally. So they're trying to make it so they depend on other countries less.
He used the deglobalization.
Deglobalization, yeah, that's the word that I have here.
Because I remember learning about in school, you learned about globalization when we started to become globalized with, which is, and now it's interesting.
That it's kind of going in reverse now. Yeah. And then the last note I had that he mentioned is you need to adapt in order to leverage new demands, which I think is something that pretty much everybody could probably get better at. Yeah. No, we definitely could. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's all I had.
There was a presentation on cybersecurity, which was not super relevant to us. We're not a mega corporation, and obviously we want to be secure, and hopefully we maintain some security. But we got to have lunch with that guy. We sat at his table. He was a super cool guy. Just
super cool. Had some actually pretty cool, interesting
he had
stories.
some cool stories, yeah.
Well, we had dinner with Bruce Melman the night before.
And yeah. So we're making friends in powerful places, I guess. Yeah. But then there was a CEO panel of just some CEOs of some of the big trucking companies out there. A couple of the points that they made that I thought were interesting. I'll just blast these out. Focus on looking inward. And so, as a company and individually, look inward rather than blaming others and looking for blaming the world. Look inward at what you can control and what you can do and focus on you. Don't worry about what your competitors are doing and what your enemies are doing or what other people are doing. Focus on what you can do. Monitor your metrics. I really like this quote. That which gets measured improves. I'm butchering the quote. You'll know this quote.
Yeah.
When performance is measured, performance improves. When performance is measured and reported, the rate of improvement accelerates. Yeah. So, you want to get better at something, track it. There's a huge correlation. I've seen the studies on this. People that check their weight every day, they see it go the direction they want to go. People that check their bank account every day, they see it. There's a correlation between monitoring a metric and the metric improving. Don't cut anything that cuts culture, just as a business recommendation. Mm-hmm. Like when, a lot of these trucking companies, and we've experienced this, you have to make cuts when times are tough or you won't stay in business. In deciding what to cut, don't cut the things that are critical to your culture. So like, here at Gateway, there are parts of our culture, we don't want to cut that away. We like the community that we have. We like certain things. So when we have to cut things to survive, you're just being strategic about what that is. And sorry, I'm trying to rapid fire so I don't cut you guys short on time, but the importance of focusing on the right things and then just responding to applications faster, which is one of the things that we're going to try and really push when we're in hiring mode. We want to call people back soon. Anything from?
Yeah. I had basically two other things to add to that. First one, and I'm a little biased on this, that safety does directly lower costs. Which makes sense when you think about it, because the safer a fleet is, the less accidents, so less claims, the less money you're going to lose.
Yeah. Our
better for everyone.
Is insurance.
Yeah. So the safer we are, the less we would need to pay in insurance. And then the other thing, like Justin said, these were CEOs of these trucking companies who've been in this business for a while. Most of them, I think most of them are well over 50, been in it their whole lives. And one of them mentioned, it has been bad before and it improved. And that's how it will again, So right now it may not be the best out there, but it will improve as it has in the past. Yeah, that's last things on that one.
All my notes on there were, I think, for my own personal improvement. So
be like that really cool old guy. One of the CEOs, he was like 80. He had the coolest points. He was like, that dude is on it.
Yeah, prioritizing. And I think the perspective was kind of the message he was pushing to a little bit, which I very much appreciated. It's about, to your point, Greg, to his, the perspective, difficulty, things are relative. Mm-hmm. Is your kid saying, was it this bad when you were a kid? And in your mind, and there's also a recency bias. They talked about that, and how everything right now seems crazier because we're going through.
But then if you read the history, it's like there have been a lot crazier things that have happened. There will be more crazy things that will continue to happen.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's a lot of people on this planet. Crazy things are going to go down.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, the next thing is about demographics. So speaking of people, I'm going to rapid fire these off, but I found this to be very interesting. They listed off the top 10 main concerns of drivers and top 10 main concerns of carriers. And they were quite similar. I'm going to go through the drivers first. These are the top 10 main concerns of drivers. This was from a significant polling. I don't remember how many people, but they got a lot of people. So this is probably pretty reflective of the general trucking industry. Yeah. The number one was truck parking, not having places to park. Number two is pay. 3 is the economy as a whole. 4 is delays, so getting delayed at pickups and drops. 5 is speed limiters on trucks. 6 was broker issues. 7 ELDs. 8 fuel prices. 9 autonomous trucks. I forgot number 10. I didn't write that one down in time. So if you think about your major concerns, do they mirror the rest of the industry? Probably. When I thought about what mine are, I was like, not necessarily exactly that order,
parking,
but pretty
close.
Yeah, parking and pay are the top two. And then these are the carrier ones, slightly different, but overall pretty similar. Number 1, the economy as a whole. 2, lawsuits. 3, driver shortages. 4, insurance costs. 5 driver retention, 6 CSA, which carrier
safety,
basically. 7 parking, 8 EVs, electronic vehicles, 9 distracted driving, and 10 the diesel tech shortages. And so those are, and then there's a couple other statistics I'll share that I thought were interesting. About 70% of accidents involving commercial vehicles are the non-commercial vehicles' fault. So
it was 68%,
68
to be
okay,
exact.
I rounded a little bit.
I wrote that number exact because I found it.
That's I don't know what that means exactly, but commercial drivers are the professionals. You would hope that they would less often be the reason for an accident versus the randos on the street. So that in some ways it's good that it's well above 50%.
Yeah.
Women in trucking remain stagnant. So I thought that was just an interesting demographic note. The amount of women joining and the trucking industry has been pretty flat. It's not like more women are trucking in the last few years. It's been the same. Yeah, I don't know. Do you get anything else from?
Yeah, there were just a couple other statistics that he mentioned, which this was he's the head of the ATRI, which is the American Trucking Research Institute, right? I found it really interesting. They do a lot of research, obviously, into the whole trucking industry and whatnot. They're not for profit. So I really like reading their reports. I'd recommend it to people, but they can be boring. Anyways, some of the statistics and whatnot that he mentioned. Truck parking has been the number one issue for 4 out of the 5 last years for drivers. And then he also mentioned that women CDL drivers are statistically safer drivers than men CDL drivers, which I thought was interesting.
Why? I'm just kidding.
And skip all jokes related to this.
Yep.
All right. The last presenter, the keynote was, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, Josh Linkner.
Yeah, I think Linkner.
He's an entrepreneur, author, business guy. A few of the things that I took from his was more general audience, right? Just radical obsession with customer happiness. Start before you're ready. Find little innovations, little improvements. That was the main thing I took from his. I forget the exact phrasing he used, but it was basically find little ways to improve consistently. Which I just generally agree with. That general concept is 1% better, not 10x, because that's not sustainable. You just make little improvements consistently, and that not being consistently great, but being great at consistency, right?
Yeah.
So, anyway, any other things that you guys got from it?
The only real notes I had for his was just innovate when you can.
Yeah.
I think I checked out mentally by that point.
Yeah. You were fast asleep. No, we enjoy going to the Cottingham and Butler conference, and not that everybody listening to this is keeping up on all the insurance industry stuff, but we like being partners with people that put on such good events like this. We really get a lot from it. So we thought if we can distill it down and just share some of the highlights with our drivers or anybody else that listens to this, hopefully they can get a few nuggets of wisdom like what we got, instead of spending 2 days, spending 30 minutes listening to us talk about the 2 days of conferences that we went to. Hopefully there's something valuable. But if not, then the next podcast, we'll get you something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're trying to, this is an example of us trying to be better, trying to stay plugged into the industry, the way that it continues to evolve, trying to see what road barriers there are, in the future, and trying our best to navigate around them. So we're trying to improve.
Yeah. And just with that, and sorry, Greg, I didn't mean to cut you off, but you leave things where you're talking about the economy and politics and all. It's easy to get in a negative mindset, and they do a really good job of, putting a realistic but positive outlook on everything. But I think with just as me preaching my perspective, I am a big advocate of see the positive in it. And so it is helpful to remember there's always been crazy things that have happened. There's always been political uncertainty. There's always been economic uncertainty. There will probably always be that way, but things work out and things seem to be, get better. And I think the RV industry, the camping industry is going to be great. I think it's going to be fine. I think it's going to ebb and flow like everything, especially based on whatever the economy's doing. but the beauties of the outdoors are not going away, and people are going to want to enjoy them more. And I think that's I think that things are going to be going well. So anyway, there's my 2 cents. Do you have anything else, Greg?
No, not really.
Okay. Thank you everyone for listening. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you.